Okay, boys and girls, today we're going to start the last chapter of Ramona and her father, chapter 7, Ramona and the Three Wise Persons. So I want you to listen and try to think about how Ramona is feeling based on clues by the author during different parts of this chapter. Suddenly, a few days before Christmas, when the Quimby family least expected it, the telephone rang for Ramona's father. He had a job. The morning after New Year's Day, he was to report for training as a checker in a chain of supermarkets. The pay was good. He would have to work some evenings, and maybe someday he would get to manage a market. Already, how do you think Ramona's feeling? Probably happy, relieved, excited. After that phone call, Mr. Quimby stopped reaching for cigarettes that were not there and began to whistle as he ran the vacuum cleaner and folded the clothes from the dryer. The worried frown disappeared from Mrs. Quimby's forehead. Beezus looked even more calm and serene. Ramona, however, made a mistake. She told her mother about her tight shoes. Mrs. Quimby then wasted a Saturday afternoon shopping for shoes when she could have been sewing on Ramona's costume. As a result, when they drove to church the night of the Christmas Carol program, Ramona was the only unhappy member of her family. Why do you think she's unhappy? Take a guess. Do you think maybe her mom did not get that sheep costume ready? Maybe she doesn't get to be a sheep. All right, let's read to find out. Mr. Quimby sang as he drove, "There's a little wheel a-turning in my heart. There's a little wheel a-turning in my heart." Ramona loved that song because it made her think of Howie, who liked machines. Tonight, however, she was determined not to enjoy her father's singing. Rain blew against the car. Headlights shone on the pavement. The windshield wipers split-splopped. Mrs. Quimby leaned back, tired but relieved. Beezus smiled her gentle smile that Ramona had found so annoying in the past 3 weeks. Ramona sulked. Someplace above those cold, wet clouds, the very same star was shining that had guided the three wise men to Bethlehem. On a night like this, they never would have made it. Mr. Quimby sang on, "Oh, I feel like shouting in my heart." Ramona interrupted her father's song. "I don't care what anybody says," she burst out. "If I can't be a good sheep, I'm not going to be a sheep at all." She yanked off the white terry cloth headdress with pink-lined ears that she was wearing and stuffed it into the pocket of her car coat. So there's the little sheep costume her mom had made her. A little head, and you can see there's little bunnies on her costume, which actually reminds me of the cover. All right, so that's all the costume her mom could make. She started to pull her father's rolled down socks from her hands because they really didn't look like hooves, but then she decided they kept her hands warm. She squirmed on the lumpy terry cloth tail sewn on the seat of her pajamas. Ramona could not pretend that faded pajamas printed with an army of pink rabbits, half of them upside down, made her look like a sheep, and Ramona was usually good at pretending. Mrs. Quimby's voice was tired. "Ramona, your tail and headdress were all I could manage, and I had to stay up late last night to finish those. I simply don't have time for complicated sewing." Ramona knew that. Her family had been telling her so for the past 3 weeks. "A sheep should be woolly," said Ramona. "A sheep should not be printed with pink bunnies." "You could be a sheep that has been shorn," said Mr. Quimby, who was full of jokes now that he was going back to work. "Or how about a wolf in sheep's clothing?" "You just want me to be miserable," said Ramona, not appreciating her father's humor and feeling that everyone in her family should be miserable because she was. "She's worn out," said Mrs. Quimby, as if Ramona could not hear. "It's so hard to wait for Christmas at her age." Ramona raised her voice. "I am not worn out. You know sheep don't wear pajamas." "That's showbiz," said Mr. Quimby. "Daddy," said Beezus Mary, was shocked. "It's church." "And don't forget, Ramona," said Mr. Quimby, "as my grandmother would have said, those pink bunnies will never be noticed by a trotting horse." Ramona disliked her father's grandmother even more. Besides, nobody rode trotting horses in church. The sight of light shining through the stained glass window in the big stone church diverted Ramona for a moment, and the window looked beautiful, as if it were made of jewels. Mr. Quimby backed the car into a parking space. Ho, 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 he said as he turned off the ignition. 'Tis the season to be jolly. Jolly was the last thing Ramona was going to be. Leaving the car, she stooped down inside her car coat to hide as many rabbits as possible. Black branches clawed the sky and the wind was raw. That means really, really just cold. It's like what's Stand up straight, said Ramona's heartless father. I'll get wet, said Ramona. I might catch cold and then you'd be sorry. Run between the drops, said Mr. Quimby. They're too close together, answered Ramona. Oh, you too, said Mrs. Quimby with a tired little laugh as she backed out of the car and tried to open her umbrella at the same time. I will not be in it, Ramona defied her family once and for all. They can give the program without me. Her father's answer surprised her. Suit yourself, he said. You're not going to spoil our evening. Mrs. Quimby gave the seat of Ramona's pajamas an affectionate pat. Run along, little lamb, wagging your tail behind you. Ramona walked stiff-legged so that her tail would not wag. At the church door, the family parted, the girls going downstairs to the Sunday school room, which was a confusion of chattering children piling coats and raincoats on the chairs. Ramona found a corner behind the Christmas tree where Santa would pass out candy canes after the program. She sat down on the floor with her car coat pulled over her bent knees. Through the branches, Ramona watched carolers putting on their white robes. Girls were tying tinsel around one another's heads, while Mrs. Russo searched out boys and tied tinsel around their heads too. It's all right for boys to wear tinsel, said Mrs. Russo. Some looked as if they were not certain they believed her. One boy climbed on a chair. I'm an angel, watch me fly, he announced and jumped off, flapping the wide sleeves of his choir robe. All the carolers turned into flapping angels. Nobody noticed Ramona. Everyone was having too much fun. Shepherds found their cloaks, which were made from old cotton bedspreads. Beezus' friend Henry Huggins arrived and put on the dark robe he was to wear in the part of Joseph. The other two sheep appeared. Howie's acrylic sheep suit with the zipper on the front was as thick and fluffy as Ramona knew it would be. Ramona longed to pet Howie. He looked so soft. Howie's flannel suit was fastened with safety pins, and there was something wrong with the ears. If his tail had been longer, he could have passed for a kitten, but he did not seem to mind. Both boys wore brown mittens. Howie, who was a thin little sheep, jumped up and down and made his tail wag, which surprised Ramona. At school, he was always so shy. Maybe he felt brave inside his sheep suit. Howie, a chunky sheep, made his tail wag too. My ears are as good as theirs, Ramona told herself. The floor felt cold through the seat of her thin pajamas. And look at all the details in that picture. There's Ramona, and there's the angels flapping their wings, and there's Howie and Davy wagging their tails, and the kids getting ready. Look at all the detail. When you draw a picture for a book, boys and girls, you should put this much detail into your pictures. Make them really detailed. Look at the little lambs, cried an angel. Aren't they darling? Bah, bah, bleated Davy and Howie. Ramona longed to be there with them, jumping and banging and wagging her tail too. Maybe the faded rabbits didn't show as much as she thought. She sat hunched and miserable. She had told her father she would not be a sheep, and she couldn't back down now. I don't really mean to be horrid. It just works out that way. She was frightened and discovered for when the program began, she would be left alone in the church basement. The lights might even be turned out. A scary thought, for a big stone church filled Ramona with awe, and she did not want to be left alone in the dark. Oh, please, please get me out of this mess. Beezus, in a long blue robe with a white scarf over her head and carrying a baby blanket and a big flashlight, found her little sister. Come out, Ramona, she coaxed. Nobody will notice your costume. You know Mother would have made you a whole sheep suit if she had time. Be a good sport, please. Ramona shook her head and blinked to keep tears from falling. I told Daddy I wouldn't be in the program, and I won't. Well, okay, if that's the way you feel, said Beezus, forgetting to act like Mary. She left her little sister to her misery. Ramona sniffed and wiped her eyes on her hoof. Why didn't some grown-up come along and make her join the other sheep? No grown-up came. No one seemed to remember there were supposed to be 3 sheep, not even Howie, who played with her almost every day. Ramona's eyes caught the reflection of her face distorted in a green Christmas ornament. She was shocked to see her nose looked huge and her mouth and red-rimmed eyes tiny. She couldn't really look like that, thought Ramona in despair. I'm really a nice person. It's just that nobody understands. Ramona mopped her eyes on her hoof again, and as she did, she noticed 3 girls, so tall they were probably in the 8th grade, putting on robes made from better bedspreads than the shepherd's robes. That's funny, she thought. Nothing she had learned in Sunday school told her anything about girls in long robes in the nativity scene. Could they be Jesus's aunts? You'll have to wait till tomorrow to find out, boys and girls. How do you think Ramona's feeling right now? I think she's feeling sorry that she told her family she wouldn't be in the play. And I think she's feeling scared to be alone in that basement. I think she really, really, really wants to be in that play. I hope she finds a way to do it. We'll have to wait for tomorrow to see. All right, bye, boys and girls.